to make it happen, that's the goal.
And welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Coming up on the show, I'm sure by now you've heard about the shooting that took place in Minneapolis at the Catholic Church school that got everybody outraged, rightfully so. But the thing I want to focus on is the reaction of that, because there was a lot of people that went to social media to express their outrage, mainly their outrage not at the guy that did the shooting or things like that, but about the Second Amendment and getting rid of the Second Amendment and gun control and things like that. Now, I don't know what your feed was like, but mine lit up overnight. Like there was everything was about how bad we need to get rid of guns. And when you look at these videos, they were, profanity-laced tirades that were probably orchestrated by somebody somewhere. Maybe you got some videos that people were paid to make to try to push a narrative that then others mimicked. Maybe there were organizations and people like that that were putting videos out. Because, again, the verbiage of these videos were pretty common. I mean, the one thing that I think was attributed to Jen Psaki was the thoughts and prayers. All of them had, "I don't want your thoughts and prayers." Well, that's fine. You might not believe in thoughts and prayers, and, you might not believe that prayers work. Maybe you don't believe thoughts work, but they were outraged by thoughts and prayers. Now, for those that might not agree with thoughts, maybe you're of a religious nature and you think prayers work, but thoughts and good vibes, people that say that, yeah, we all understand that sending thoughts and vibes, and even people that don't believe in prayer, which tends to be a lot of people apparently after these videos came out. But the sentiment behind it, the people sending that, the people saying that, are people that genuinely care about the situation that you're in, probably don't have anything else they could do except extend some sort of condolences, extend some sort of something through the use of words, through the use of a message. And that's what we become to do. Kind of like LOL. We're not really laughing out loud, but we use that as an acronym for this is something that's funny. So when you say I'm sending you thoughts, prayers, vibes, yeah, they may or may not work as far as the vibes and the thoughts and stuff like that. But the sentiment behind it, I believe, is actually genuine and true. And so for people to mock that, you're just mocking people's emotions about the event that happened. But you had thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. We don't want your thoughts and prayers. That was the underlining theme. Then when it came to more of a Second Amendment protest, it was like, if you're a hunter, why don't you get bows and arrows? Use bows and arrows, bow and arrows. And that became the synonymous anti-2A protest video in these profanity-laced tirades. So again, the verbiage, the way these things were laid out, the emotion behind it, it was all, to me, pretty fake, because it was just a narrative that they were trying to push to get rid of the Second Amendment. But that's set aside. Here's the real thing, okay? Here's the real thing that you need to look at. If you really are genuinely concerned about kids, as you say you do, why aren't you focusing that same vitriol, that same anger, that same outrage at other things that are affecting kids? And that's what I want to focus on the show about. Some of the other things that we should be looking at in our outrage to protect kids, as they say. Now, imagine, if you will, you're in your vehicle. Maybe it's a more expensive car. Maybe it's more affordable. It doesn't matter. You're driving down the freeway, the interstate, the highway, whatever you call it in your region, and you're going 65 miles an hour. Maybe in some places it's 70, others 75. You're going the speed limit. That's what we're encouraging. And then all of a sudden you slam that car into reverse. If the car would even allow you to do that. There's a lot of safeguards in cars now to protect us from us. Automatic, like lane change. If you put the blinker on and you go change lanes and there's a car there, a beep to warn us, right? We don't look over our shoulders. We don't see a vehicle, but we try to change lanes. Oh, it beeps. There's a car there. I must have missed it. Or automatic braking. Getting too close to the car in front of us, we might have automatic braking or emergency braking. So there's a lot of protections, backup cameras, a lot of protections in vehicles now to protect us from us. But let's say you're driving down and You're going 65, 70, 75, whatever the speed limit is in your region, and you slam the car into reverse, or you drop it into a low gear. What's going to happen? Well, chances are bad things will happen. Your car will probably stop working. If it's not completely destroyed, where you need a new car, you will probably need extensive repairs on it. That's going to cost a lot of money. It's something we just wouldn't do. It's ill-advised. Plus, it's dangerous and it will affect other people around us, right? Of course. Now, imagine, if you will, you take the human body and puberty is going along. Maybe the kid's young boy, let's say, between 8 and 14. And puberty's coming along and the body chemistry is changing from a boy to a man. Hair starts to grow, voice gets deeper, that type of stuff, chemically changing the body. And then all of a sudden you start injecting it with all kinds of things to halt that and put it in reverse and change it. So testosterone becomes estrogen. What's going to happen to the body? Well, probably similar to that of the vehicle. The body's going to start to break down and things aren't going to go as expected because naturally the body is progressing in a certain area. And then you start injecting things into the body to alter it and change it, to make it something that it's not. And it's going to affect the body. I mean, we look at steroids. Steroids became all the rage at one point, and then rage became the result of roid rage. And people are like, no, that's probably a bad thing to inject yourself with. Even the WWE wrestling got rid of steroids because of the harmful effects it had on the wrestlers. We look at other things. I mean, any type of pharmaceutical commercial, whether it's something for weight loss or something for wet MD or something for plaque psoriasis, whatever it is, it will tell you the benefits, and then the side effects are always something negative that lead to death, blindness, kidney failure, liver failure. Tell your doctor if you have these conditions. And then it goes back to a cheerful, lighthearted, hey, but you can do better if you take this pharmaceutical. So we all know that pharmaceuticals are going to change us. We know the body goes through many different changes in life, both chemically, hormones, stuff like that. Not only do boys go through puberty, as do girls, but you think about, later in life. Men, as they get older, their body changes. Testosterone begins to become less and less. We can't eat like we used to. We get that beer belly gut thing going. Women go through menopause. You have changes in your body. Pregnancy, a lot of changes. You need to feed it with, prenatal vitamins and be careful what you eat because it'll affect the baby. So there's a lot of things that we do, but there's a lot of warnings into when we put things into our bodies. It could be negative. Yes, it's intended for positive, but there could be some negative effects. I mean, look at tattooing. Nobody thinks about this, but I was listening to a doctor talk about tattoos, and he had nothing against tattoos. But the conversation was, remember, when you get a tattoo, you're injecting a toxicity, an ink, into your body. And sure, it's supposed to go between the layers of skin, but there's a good chance that some of that toxicity gets into your bloodstream. Has anybody done any research on the effects of tattoo ink? No. Obviously, safety protocols and age restrictions. I don't believe you can be, well, in some cases, it's 16 and over. Some cases, it's 16 and over with parental consent. But most respectable tattoo artists, from my understanding, you have to be at least 18 before they will even think about putting ink in you. So again, well-regulated, well-respected amongst the tattoo artists as to who you're going to be giving a tattoo to. But when you take a look at this transgender ideology, because you have a person, Robert/Robin, that was transgendered, that apparently left behind a manifesto, including, why did I get brainwashed by this? And why did I let myself become this? So if that is true, and there was some detransitioning or some regret, what would cause that? Well, starting around the age of 8, maybe 8 to 14, depending upon when puberty begins, you can start adding puberty blockers to somebody's body. I guess they call it the Tanner stage 2. This is when things start to change. You start to get breast enlargements. You start to get testicular growth, things like that. But then when you have gender dysphoria, that apparently is supposed to be recognized by somebody in the health profession to say that you have it. And then apparently there's supposed to be some sort of informed consent from parents or guardians for minors. But now we've gotten away from that because we don't want parental consent to get in the way with a political agenda that brings in billions of dollars a year. So you start injecting people, young boys, for example. Let's start with boys, male to female transition, with things that I can't even pronounce. Now, I don't know if you've ever talked to a nutritionist or a dietitian or something like that. Most of them will say if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. You shop the outside of the stores because that's where the produce is, that's where the fresh meat is, that's where like the good stuff is. All the packaged stuff is in the middle aisles. You shop the outside of the store. If you're going to buy a gun, we're talking about 2A, you have to be 21, you have to be 18, depending upon the type of weapon you're going to purchase, right? And then there's all kinds of gun laws and stuff like that that you can research to figure out in your state what they are, but there's all kinds of requirements, really. But you've got something like leoprolide, histrelin, triptorelin, spironolactone, bicalutamide. I probably butchered those names, but again, that's what it is. These are some of the things as far as the puberty blockers and others that are going to go into the body. What might some side effects be? Well, you get hot flashes if you have leoprolide, injection site pain, decreased bone density, because again, you're trying to go from a man to a woman, and mood changes. So, leoprolide, you get mood changes as a side effect. How about histrelin? Skin reaction, headaches, mood changes, slowed growth if used long term. What about triptorelin? Hot flashes, mood changes, headaches, decreased bone density. What about spironolactone? Increased urination, dizziness, fatigue, potassium changes, and bicalutamide, liver enzyme changes, breast tenderness, fatigue. So a lot of these you'll notice come with mood changes. Is there any wonder why we're probably starting to see some people get into some situations like what we saw in Minneapolis? But instead of focusing on some of the stuff we're injecting that might cause mood swings, you think mood swings are nothing? Imagine, if you will, a woman so desperately wants to be a mom. That's all they think about is becoming a mom. And they have all these plans for their child. They have all these things they're going to do. They get pregnant. They prepare the room. You're going to be a perfect mom, everyone says. They give birth. And then what happens? Postpartum depression sets in. And now they want to get rid of the child. It's unexplained. I actually had a conversation with a teacher in a generalized setting, a summer school setting. We were waiting for kids to come into the class, and she was kind of sharing her story a little bit. It was kind of interesting to see. Completely unexpected, this postpartum depression. And so they had to remove the child because she was going to do harm to it, and she could not explain it. She went on to have a second kid, but this time they were prepared for everything. And they set up their support system, all that. Doctors, everybody was prepared for what was to happen. Successful second child. Again, something she wanted, something she desired, something she knew was going to happen in the backside. So they prepared. And sure enough, baby's born, postpartum depression sets in. Body changes, mood changes, mental health changes. And that's from something that's natural. So imagine if you're sticking something in somebody's body that is a chemical that's especially probably doesn't belong there. Now, I'm not saying there's applications that might benefit in other places. I'm talking about 18 to 14-year-old boy that's getting injected with chemicals that does not belong in the system, and how its intent is to change the body into something that naturally isn't supposed to be. It's like driving down the freeway, jamming that car into reverse, seeing what happens. With the side effects of all these, at least puberty blockers, being mood changes, amongst other things. The other thing that spironolactone, however you say it, has as far as side effects can affect kidneys and electrolytes. The bicalamutinamide, whatever that is, it blocks testosterone's effect. It doesn't lower the levels, it just blocks the effects. And so you need to check your liver all the time. So now we're starting to see how this becomes a long-term thing. More money for doctors because there are more liver checks. If it goes unchecked, you have health problems. Health problems lead to regret, whatever. So there's all kinds of things going on. Cyproterine acetate. Very strong, but higher side effects and risks, and it's not even used in the US anymore. So as they're discovering certain things that were once being used, they're taking these things out. So now you have all these parents protesting 2A because we can't have this anymore. Prayers, thoughts, screw that. Go get your bow and arrow if you want to hunt, which, by the way, if you had a bow and arrow, I'm sure you could take that to a school and do some damage. But anyways. So why aren't you protesting the stuff that's going into the kids? Why isn't that something on your radar? Because it's very clear that these chemicals that are going in to the body aren't supposed to be there, and they're causing dramatic effects. So some other things as far as hormone replacement therapy. Okay. We all know what they're designed to do, change the body from male to female or female to male, depending upon the situation. But some other effects could be blood clots, especially if somebody's taking oral estrogen, weight gain, again, mood changes, emotional swings, depression, anxiety in some. Now remember that. Obviously, sexual changes, which is, I guess, part of the problem, which includes infertility. So if you ever want to come back from it, you might not have kids. Remember that. Elevated triglycerides, cholesterol imbalances, risk of gallstones, liver strain. What about feminizing HRT, human replacement therapy, in estrogen, for example? More emotional sensitivity. Some people feel they cry more easily, connected with strong emotions, mood swings. So you had puberty blockers, and now you have human or hormone replacement therapy with all the same side effects. Anxiety, irritability can happen, especially when hormones fluctuate, or if estrogen is taken in a form that causes peaks and crashes, maybe like an oral dosing. Depression risk. So again, when you're talking from going from male to female, it's feminization, hormone replacement therapy. Basically, you're injecting estrogen and some other stuff into a young boy, 8 to 14, or whomever. You're looking at more emotional sensitivity, mood swings, anxiety, irritability, and depression risks. Is it no wonder we're starting to see more and more things go bad with kids that are being injected with this? A new study from the Williams Institute at UCLA School of Law finds that 81% of transgendered adults in the U.S. have thought about suicide. 42% of transgendered adults have attempted it, and 56% have engaged in non-suicidal self-injury over their lifetimes. Pretty significant. So we are injecting things into the body that shouldn't be there. Side effects are mood swings, depression, anxiety, negative things that affect the mind, not only the body, but also the soul. And what is the end result? 81% have thought about suicide, according to UCLA Williams Institute. Using data from the U.S. Transgendered Population Health Survey, researchers examined the prevalence of hazardous drinking, problematic drug use, serious psychological distress, suicidal and non-suicidal self-injury between transgendered and cisgendered adults. And even though they have similar rates of hazardous drinking and problematic drug use, so apparently there's no real difference between someone who's transgendered and someone who's cisgendered, meaning you're naturally born, man or woman, and you haven't changed. So you could have a drinking problem, drug problem, the same. But transgendered people were significantly more likely to experience poor mental health during their lifetimes. Compared to cisgender adults, transgender adults were 7 times more likely to contemplate suicide, 4 times more likely to attempt it, 8 times more likely to engage in non-suicidal self-injury, according to the U.S. Transgendered Population Health Survey, TransPop. So apparently, again, cisgendered, transgendered, 7 times more likely to contemplate suicide, 4 times more likely to attempt it, 8 times more likely to engage in non-suicidal self-injury. Does that not tell you something about this whole thing that's going on with transgenderism and the negative effects it has? But yet it gets covered up because it's a political ploy, a political pawn. When if you really were outraged, instead of focusing your outrage on the Second Amendment and items surrounding the Second Amendment, maybe if you wanted to protect kids, maybe you start looking at the things that we're injecting into them, and especially things that are injected into them that are referring to transgender ideology. According to Newsweek, it is an academically researched fact that the rate of suicides or suicidal actions among transgendered people, as well as LGBTQ+, it's far higher than the wider population, particularly among young people. While some studies suggest cases of suicide or suicide attempts among transgendered people are linked to feelings of unhappiness and their physical appearance, others have indicated that the rise in young people exhibiting gender dysphoria might be in part of a product of a wider mental health issue. So more people committing suicide, thinking about suicide, having non-suicidal self-injury, and perhaps being exposed to or having issues that are greater when it comes to mental health. According to the National Library of Medicine, social media, which is something I want to touch on in a little bit, but I'm going to put this out there as a comparison. Suicide is a second leading cause of death in youth aged 10 to 24 years old globally, but detecting those at risk is challenging. Now, the National Center of Health Statistics cite in 2023, suicide is the second leading cause of death of America for 10 to 34-year-olds. So in 2023, social media impacts us all, which is actually the platform by which we see these videos that I'm discussing about these people that are outraged, and they get on there, and instead of even A, knowing the facts, and B, being intelligent, they start rambling with these profanity-laced tirades where they don't care about your thoughts and prayers and go get a bow and arrow, and we need to confiscate all guns. Because we all know that by confiscating all guns, crime goes away because we know criminals, they obey the law. But kids are inundated by social media, and so their risk goes up of suicide. We know it's true in tweens, and we know it's true in teens. Now, you add to that transgendered ideology, and we're injecting kids with chemicals that don't belong in the body, where the effects are mood swings, where the effects are depression, where the effects are things that have to do with mental health. And what happens? Yeah, bad things. The Trevor Project, last updated January 2024. Top line facts and statistics about suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 24, third leading cause of death among 15 to 24-year-olds, according to the Center of Disease Control, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's from 2022. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer, and questioning, LGBTQ+, young people are at a significantly highly increased risk. LGBTQ young people are more than 4 times likely to attempt suicide than their peers. The Trevor Project estimates that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ young adults aged 13 to 24 seriously consider suicide in the U.S. every year. At least one attempt is made every 45 seconds. We've been talking for about 25 minutes. You can do the math to see how many people might have been attempting suicide in the last 25 minutes. The Trevor Project's 2024 U.S. National Survey on Mental Health of LGBTQ young people found that 39% of these people previously considered attempting suicide in the past year, including roughly half of transgender and non-binary youth. So again, if you're outraged and we need to go do away with the Second Amendment and all products related to that, and you're outraged because we have to do that to save kids' lives, why aren't you outraged about this? Why aren't you outraged about the LGBT community, not the community that they wish to engage in, but the fact that you can't be, you have to be 18 to get a rifle, 21 to get a handgun. You have to be 16 to get a driver's license in most places. You have to be 18 to vote. You have to be 21 to drink. You have all these regulations and age requirements. You have to be 55 plus to eat off of the senior citizens menu. So you have all these age requirement things, but yet at the age of 8 to 14, we're going to start injecting puberty blockers into our young people. And now it's to the point where it doesn't have to have parental consent. That's what we're moving towards. And in fact, in California, we talked about it not too long ago. There's a bill they're trying to pass, and maybe it has passed already, or maybe it will by the time you read this, that will allow a stranger to basically print off an affidavit off the internet, go into a school and say, yes, I'm taking this kid. Here's my affidavit. I'm a mentor, whatever. School gives the kid to said person and off they go. And when the parent shows up, the school is in no obligation to let you know where your kid is at. How do we know these people aren't going to take kids and go get them the transgendered surgeries or the transgendered injections because maybe their parents protest? Now you want to talk about school shooting. Okay, we want to blame guns. Well, Adam Lanza, who was the perpetrator at Sandy Hook, a report issued by the Office of Child Advocates in November 2014, because this was a while ago, said that Lanza had Asperger's syndrome and as a teenager suffered depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook perpetrator, was not well, is what it says. Nicholas Cruz, the Douglas Stoneman Parkland shooting. Stephen A. Moskowitz diagnosed Cruz with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. Cruz was transferred between schools, including Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, 6 times in 3 years in an effort to deal with these problems. In 2014, he was transferred to a school for children with emotional or learning disabilities. There were reports that he made threats against other students. Again, Nicholas Cruz was not well. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold from Columbine. The FBI concluded that the killers had mental illnesses. Harris was a clinical psychopath, and Klebold had depression. Dwayne Fuselier, the supervisor in charge of Columbine and the investigation, would later remark, I believe Eric went to school to kill and didn't care if he died, while Dylan wanted to die and didn't care if others died as well. Some opponents of contemporary psychiatry, like Peter Breggin, claim that the psychiatric medications prescribed to Harris may have exasperated his aggressiveness. Harris had complained of depression, anger, suicidal thoughts, for which he was prescribed antidepressants. Toxicology reports confirmed that Harris had fluvoxamine, sold under the brand name of Luvox, in his bloodstream at the time of the shooting, whereas Klebold had no medication in his system. Point being, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, Harris and Klebold were not well. Not justifying what they did by any stretch of the imagination. And also with Columbine, if you watch, there's a pretty good documentary out there somewhere. I forget where it's at, but actually talks about how other kids admit that those two were bullied as well. How about Salvador Ramos, the Uvalde school shooter? No criminal record or history of mental illness at the time. But apparently people in the community said there were signs that he could be dangerous. Isolation, outbursts and aggression, cryptic social media messages, offered photos of rifles, ammo, and hints of his desire to hurt and kill. So obviously Ramos was unwell. Aiden Hale, or Audrey Hale, the Covenant School shooter in 2023, which was transgendered. 28-year-old trans male who attended school 18 years prior. And the, I guess the Tennessee Journal, or whatever the newspaper is down there, got a hold of the manifesto. I guess it's the Nashville Star in June 2024, provided several revelations about the killer and how he spent months prior to the attack of the Covenant School. According to entries, there was reference to mental health issues. Hale confirmed his desire to transition genders, had autism diagnosis, was not bipolar, called a suicide prevention hotline or helpline 5 times in one day. And this is all in this manifesto that apparently the Nashville newspaper got a hold of, the one that was withheld from everybody for the longest time. Referenced her therapist, had possible allusions to her status as a 22-year-old mental health patient at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And there's some other things in here that I won't repeat, but it becomes kind of on the perverted side. So again, even Aiden Hale, Audrey Hale, was unwell. And now we've got the Minneapolis, Minnesota school shooter. Transgendered gunman Robin Westman admitted he was tired of being trans and wished he never brainwashed himself in an online manifesto posted before he went and did what he did. In a handwriting journal uploaded to YouTube before the attack, much of it encrypted in makeshift code, combined with some stuff, complained about his long hair and regretted his decision to transition. I only keep the long hair because it's pretty, and it's basically referring to, it doesn't make sense, but much my last shred of being trans. I'm tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself, he wrote, according to a translation by the New York Post. So, the effects, the ramifications of trans and transgender ideology and things that go on, injecting chemicals that causes mood swings, that causes anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, successful attempts, non-suicidal self-harm. I mean, the evidence is everywhere. We just spent 30 minutes talking about it. And yet there's no outrage from parents that want to protect kids about this. Well, what about this? How about a 30-year-old? And if you are watching, if you're listening on the audio, it's a person that's a 30-year-old male that looks like a young female that went through transition, detransition, and now goes back to identifying as a male. And this is the person. If you're watching on the video, you'll notice how young and how female this person looks.
I know all of you take one hormone and then you become trans rights activists. I wanted to give myself time to really explore my feelings and detransition before I shared them with you. But if you want to see the truth, this is the truth. I'm an almost 30-year-old man. This is what I look like. This is what I sound like as an almost 30-year-old man. This is what happens when you let people transition in adolescence before they've had a chance to grow up. Before they had a chance to even learn who they were. Not just but pressure people to transition at these ages. Young, vulnerable people who are already so suggestible. And I feel like everyone is ignoring the pain because they are afraid that it threatens their choices and their narrative. If you want to transition in your 20s, you've had a chance to be a man or a woman, and this is what you want to do, okay, that's one thing. But the active pressuring of people to transition so they can preserve their femininity, which is what happened with me, I was told that that if I allowed myself to age, that I would become masculine and that it would never be possible and that I would do it anyway, and that I would be a more masculine transgender person like them. And so I made the choices that I thought were right for me at the time. I do take accountability. I did it in secret from my parents. I take accountability for all my choices. But when is the trans community going to take accountability for theirs? For leading me down this path? This is the face of an almost 30-year-old man. This is the voice of an almost 30-year-old man.
Yeah, that's a good question. When's the trans community going to take responsibility for pressuring, she said, pressuring young and vulnerable people so they can push a narrative? If you want to transition in your 20s, 30s, go for it. But she never had a chance to, or he never had a chance to learn who he was because he was pressured at a young age. He takes responsibility for it. But when's the trans community going to stand up and take responsibility for pressuring young, vulnerable people into doing something that they may regret down the road? And there's more and more people coming out. You see less and less, and I'll play a clip for you in a minute that explains that. But you're starting to see more and more people come out with regret. But they go from goat, hey, you're transitioning, yay, to villain, oh, you're detransitioning, boo. In a heartbeat, blink of an eye, you go from hero to villain. Transitioning, pressuring young, vulnerable people to push a narrative. You want to do it in your 20s? Go for it. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Well, how about this? How about Chloe Cole, a transgendered person that went, I believe, from female to male, back to female. This was her comment on how she discovered that perhaps she did something wrong, the regret and the ramifications from it.
The biggest catalyst leading to my detransition, I think, was a psychology class that I took in my junior year. There was a lesson on child development and maternity and the role that physical affection from a mother and breastfeeding play in a child's later emotional, social, and cognitive development. I realized what I really had taken for myself and potentially my future children. I felt a lot of guilt, a lot of regret, and I can no longer have my breasts. I'll never have the chance to breastfeed my children or bond with them in that way. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to conceive a child even, and if I can, I don't know if I'll carry safely to term. Pretty soon after, I realized that I actually regretted every single step of my transition, and that I wish that none of it ever happened. They act like the science is all settled, that it's been here for decades and it's completely safe, but we really don't know that. We really don't know any of this.
Here she talks about taking a psychology class, personal development or child development, and realizing the ramifications, like things that the transgendered community, they don't even think about when they're pressuring young, vulnerable people. They don't think about the future. She learns that breastfeeding will never be able to do that, if she can even get pregnant at all, and even carry it to term. But she would never have that bonding experience. For herself, the regret. For her future children, the regret. But see, we don't think about that. People don't think about that. They just look at a pawn in a political system, in a $2 billion a year business. And so where are you, parent, protesting, outraged in your thoughts and prayer videos and your bow and arrow videos protesting the Second Amendment? Outrage, we need to keep kids safe. For profanity-laced tirade, keep kids safe. That's fake. Your outrage is fake and phony because you really don't care about kids. Because if you did, you would be looking into this. You'd be checking this stuff out. You'd be looking and seeing what exactly is being injected into these kids. You'd be looking, seeing what the side effects are, and maybe be pushing for age restrictions, just like, well, we see we can't do age restrictions because we have to catch them when the body's changing. And the younger we get them, the longer we keep them, the longer we keep them with surgeries, with liver checks, with kidney checks, with hormone therapy, the longer they have to be on these things and so on, the more money we get. So let's push them younger, younger, younger. We can't even read and write in America, but yet we know a kid, we believe a kid when they say they're transgendered. So that's one area that the focused outrage recently was upon. But let's talk about education. Another area where why aren't kids out there protesting? Profanity-laced tirades about the uneducated children in our society. As of the 2024 National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, the proficiency rates for U.S. students in math and reading are as follows. Reading proficiency, fourth grade, 70% of students scored below proficiency level in reading. So here's reading proficiency, 30% above, 70% low. 7 out of 10 kids can't read in the fourth grade at grade level. Eighth grade, same thing, although it's 71% can't read at grade level. What about math? Well, in fourth grade, 60% are below grade level in proficiency in math. And in eighth grade, I got to do some quick math here, 73% are below students' grade level proficiency. We have a completely uneducated society growing up because we're more worried about transgendered ideology, about woke ideology, about drag queen. Instead of having drag queen story time, why don't you take that time and teach the kid to learn how to read? Because if this is going to continue, and I know science is creeping into this, they don't really do science, but I know I've read some literature and some information that science is even becoming the third subject where grade level proficiency, fourth grade and eighth grade, and even in high school, I think they do a 12th grade, but although they might have done away with it now because, again, graduation standards have changed and a lot of people have done away with a lot of different things, requirements for graduation. Like, for example, now in order to get into college, I believe some places you don't need an ACT or an SAT. So those scores aren't even being counted towards anything if people are even taking them. So graduation requirements are changing, being lowered. The standards are being lowered. So some at the 12th grade proficiency isn't even recorded for data because people don't even have to take these type of things at that level. But now science is becoming a third. So if we're going to uneducate our kids and just waste their time in schools, because when you think about it, you have problem behaviors, you have teacher shortages, you have all kinds of issues going on in schools, and we've talked about those on the program before. But if that's the case, why don't we just after third grade, since a bulk of the kids are grade level, they're not proficient at grade level starting at fourth grade, why don't we just take them out of schools and start teaching them some sort of trade? And the ones that are proficient, well, they can continue on as long as they keep proficiency. Why not? We need plumbers. We need people to fix cars. We need all kinds of stuff that we can use because we're just wasting everybody's time and taxpayers' monies if we're not going to educate kids. So again, I would ask you, parents that are out there complaining, why aren't you out there protesting the fact that education is poor? Your kid isn't getting educated. Well, because there's a good chance these people probably don't have kids or it's not affecting them. But we don't protest that. All you people out there with the protest videos, profanity-laced tirades about thoughts and prayers, bows and arrows, anti-2A, why aren't you out there protesting fentanyl-related deaths and drugs? Fentanyl-related deaths among youth in the United States have escalated sharply in recent years, driven largely by the proliferation of counterfeit prescription pills laced with fentanyl. These pills, often sold through social media platforms like Snapchat, have led to numerous accidental overdoses among teenagers and young adults, according to the Times. Youth overdose trends, teen overdose rates is the headline. Between 2019 and 2022, overdose deaths among U.S. adolescents 15 to 19 increased significantly. In 2022, an average of 22 adolescents died each week from drug overdoses, equating to a high school classroom's worth of students every week. So every week, classroom full of people are dying because of drugs. Every week in 2022, a classroom full of people died because of drugs and drug overdose. Fentanyl has become the leading cause of these fatalities. In 2019-2020, adolescent overdose deaths involving fentanyl surged by 177%. Fentanyl remains a significant threat to youth. Interesting. How about opioids? That's the word I'm looking for. Opioid-related deaths in children from 2018 to 2022. There was an examination of 985 opioid-related deaths among children ages 1 to 17, with a majority of these cases being aged 15 to 17, with unintentional ingestion being the common cause. These deaths occurred at home, highlighting the risk of unsupervised access to opioids. So, fentanyl, opioids, other drugs that are out there. Why aren't we protesting that? Why aren't we protesting the fact that we've got a drug problem in this country? Why aren't we out there fighting to save kids from drugs, drug intervention, drug education? But no, we're not out there protesting that because nobody cares, because it's not a political thing. Plus, there's no money to be made, legally anyways, that benefits other people. So the narrative is, nah, we'll just stay silent on it. We'll use all our efforts, okay? We're going to use all our efforts to promote things that are $2 billion a year industry. Transgender ideology, abortion, which we're not even going to get into. But again, why aren't you out there protesting that when that kills kids? What about social media? I mentioned the social media stats from earlier about the suicide rates of all the people that have suffered suicide because of, according to the National Library of Medicine, social media, suicide is the second leading cause of death in youth aged 10 to 24 globally. But detecting those risks is challenging. National Center of Health Statistics cite in 2023, suicide is the second leading cause of death for America, ages 10 to 34. Again, why aren't we protesting social media? Why don't we have age verification? We got age verification for all other types of things I mentioned before: guns, drinking, driver's license, voting, going into the army, a bunch of stuff like that. But the risks of social media, anxiety and depression. Now imagine having that anxiety and depression. Again, tween suicide has gone up. Suicide amongst youth have gone up. Now imagine you throw in the transgendered and all the stuff that they're injecting in their body with all the mood swings and all the depression and all the mental health risks. Society is shaping up to be pretty dangerous, a pretty dangerous place for young people. They're uneducated, no future. They're being inundated with an ideology. They're pawns in a bigger game. And when it comes down to it, they're being attacked through social media, whether it's cyberbullying, whether it's Snapchat getting drug-related paraphernalia, whether it's vaping is cool. Whatever it is, they're being inundated with all this stuff, and parents don't seem to care. So anxiety and depression, lower self-esteem, fear of missing out, all because of social media. Addiction and compulsive use, another negative side effect. Scroll, 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 scroll. This can interfere with sleep, work, school, and relationships. Of course, cyberbullying and harassment. In fact, just the other day, I saw somebody post a picture of a cheerleader. And when you delve into it a little bit more, read the captions, and then do some research, follow the chain, it turned out that this cheerleader that was getting ready to cheer on a Friday night, now again, if it's true, we take that into question, but it appears to be on the up and up. But apparently she bullied a couple people into taking their lives. I did a show a while back on Aubrey White out of Mississippi, a 13, 14-year-old girl that eventually took her life because 4 other girls bullied her to death. She took her life. Aubrey White. Sleep disruption. A mental health risk of social media, body image issues, idolizing photos and videos that promote unrealistic beauty standards, eating disorders, self-esteem disorders. What about loneliness and social isolation? Stress from overexposure to the news and negativity. Constant exposure to bad news, arguments, and negativity increases stress and hopelessness. Reduced attention span and productivity. Quick scrolling feeds make focusing on long-term tasks harder. Risk of self-harm and suicidal ideation. Again, the effects of social media. So again, why aren't we protesting this? Because it doesn't fit an ideology, it doesn't fit a narrative, it doesn't make us money. It doesn't do any of these things. And so if you really did care about students, and we don't even have to talk about going through the drive-through, fast food, diet, obesity, out of control, and all that eating crap stuff in this society. We all do it. I do it too. But I'm just saying, as parents, if we really cared about the safety of kids, would we be running through the drive-through all the time? Probably not. See, that's the problem. Would we put undue pressure on them in Little League? Would we put them in travel ball at the age of 10? The whole point of travel ball at the age of 10 is completely ridiculous because all you're doing is making somebody else rich and you poor. A kid either has it or he doesn't. With working hard, maybe in high school, as he's developing naturally, in the weight room properly, proper nutrition, working on his game, his or her game. Yeah, you might develop into maybe a college athlete at some point, somewhere. But again, the chances of going pro or the chances of getting a scholarship for athletics is probably pretty thin compared to how many people are out there and how many people get it. Academics is where you would get your education, your scholarships, grants, and things like that. But we're 70% below grade level proficiency in math and reading at 4th and 8th grade. We don't care about the young people. Because if we did, we'd be standing up to all these things. I mean, think about it. You've got education we talked about. You've got social media we talked about. You've got drugs we talked about. You've got ideology, in this case, transgendered ideology, because the outrage was based on a shooting by a transgendered person that was, by their own account, brainwashed into something that they wish they'd never gotten involved with. We heard video from somebody talking about pressuring young people who haven't even explored who they are, don't even know who they are themselves, and the ramifications of that, where you're stuck being a 30-year-old man that looks like a 16, 17-year-old girl and talks like one too. Because the chemicals that were injected, the body is going along like a car on the interstate going 60, 70, 75 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit is in your area. You jam it into reverse or a lower gear or something like that, and it's going to go south quickly for that vehicle. That's what happens to the body. And people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the side effects of the chemicals that are being injected into the body. Things I can't even pronounce. All of them have as a side effect mood swings. We've talked about the statistics of mental health, of suicide, suicide contemplation, self-hurt, self-harm for non-suicide, and all that stuff. It's all negative. Tell me, show me some statistics. Seriously, show me some statistics. I just proved to you all this stuff can be researched and verified online. I made nothing up. Do your own research, but show me somewhere where transgendered ideology is a good thing. Show me statistics that say, oh, this is the benefit of it. Because if you delve deeper into it, what you're going to find, now it's becoming a little bit less and less, but you're going to find a lot of people in the transgendered ideology world, transgender people, are working in the sex business. They become drug addicts. Do the research. Check it out for yourself. Don't just rely on me. But show me some statistics where it's a good thing. Show me what's positive. You might find one person here, one person there, or a couple people that, hey, this is the best thing that ever happened. Probably a one-off. Probably because of who they were and whatever their situation was. Probably worked for them. But show me vast statistics like I showed you here of where it's positive, where it's good. The only place it's positive and the only place it's good is in the pocketbooks of those that are administering it. Doctors, surgeries to the hundreds of thousands of dollars, pre-care, post-care, pharmaceutical companies making a boatload of money off of the continued use of hormone therapy. And then if you're lucky to get aftercare, because again, you have to pay for this yourself because as of now, I'm not really aware of insurance is paying for it. I know we hear a lot about taxpayers paying for it, for people in prison, for illegals, for all these other entities. But show me some statistics. That's a positive thing. Convince me, because I don't think you can find it. Do your own research and let me know, because I don't think you can find it. And parents, if you're out there protesting, we need this for safer kids. Why aren't you out there fighting against fentanyl and drugs? Why aren't you out there trying to help educate your kid instead of giving an iPad or an Xbox or whatever it is, the latest, greatest thing, Nintendo Switch? Why don't you actually prepare some food instead of going through the drive-through? Yeah, I know life is tough and we all go through a bunch of stuff and we all have a lot to deal with, but it goes the extra mile. I mean, we've got weekends. Maybe we get people that can try to help us. There's all kinds of things that one can do if we really, really wanted to. If we wanted to own it, we would be able to find a way. But see, we really don't care because as a society, we're instant gratification. As a society, it's all about me. We're narcissistic. Even people that have kids, it's about me. And then the kids get neglected. It's about making money, the quick buck. It's about self and all that includes. It's about being pawns in a bigger game for other people to have power, to have money, of success. And it's a political pawn. So again, look at all the people benefiting. How do you benefit? You're out there. Your kid didn't go to that school. Maybe your kid graduated, had no issues whatsoever. Does any of this affect you? Why are you protesting it? If it doesn't affect you, why are you there yelling and screaming about something that you never affected, that never affected you? I saw some other posts about people talking about how, well, instead of guns, you can use like mace or a taser or whatever. And I made a response. I said, there's probably a good chance you've never been confronted or had to do anything to defend yourself against somebody that was violently going to attack you. Because a taser and pepper spray, which may seem like good ideas and may be good, but they require a proximity in order for them to work. Do you really want somebody within that proximity? If you have a taser, I don't know about taser guns, but if you have a taser, you have to actually touch the person with it. They're within arm's reach. If you have pepper spray, they have to be within a certain distance. And even then, do you know how to use it? And are you willing to use it? See, that's the other thing. People aren't willing to commit to something to defend themselves, and we become victims. Not all cases, but these people out there protesting, chances are you don't know how to do that to defend yourself. And it doesn't even affect you, and yet you're outraged by it because either A, you were paid by it, paid by an institution or an organization or something to push it out there. B, you're just a copycat and you see a lot of it cross your feed and you want the likes because you're narcissistic and you're faux tears. You want the follows. So you put on this act. And you don't really care because if you really cared about the safety of kids, these are just some of the things that I present to you that you just don't care about because I see nothing on your feeds protesting them. And everything that we've talked about is a second or third thing or a high level thing that is a leading cause of death in young people. What are you going to do about it? Continue with your videos, your outrage, your protesting? Or are you going to actually take effort? Are you going to actually take action to educate kids, to stop the flow of drugs, to prevent social media and the harm that comes from that, letting strangers into your kid's room? It's up to you. You've got to make that decision. Again, thanks for listening. 2 Steps Ahead podcast. Take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Thanks for listening. Do tell a friend. And Until next time, God bless.